This week, I want to give you just a really quick course in teaching languages. Just a crash course sharing some of the infographics I've done over the years. I really like to put things together in a concise, easy way. It helps me understand them better. And I certainly hope that you come away from this video with some new ideas. So, this is language learning in the past. I loved languages so much that there were some things I certainly liked about traditional language learning. I liked doing the exercises. I felt rewarded when I did it. I liked getting things right. I enjoyed interacting. I liked the pictures of the book. And back then, while all of those activities were meant to add up to proficiency, there were so many things, particularly the tests were based on accuracy, and that was always really disappointing. You feel like, okay, I'm learning this new language and I feel successful, and then boom, the test is not so great. Um, and those textbooks, right? Those tests that came with those textbooks, a lot of times didn't have audio, and technology wasn't as easy or intuitive or abundant. If the teacher had a broken tape or couldn't get the slideshow, or actually the slides don't count for listening, but video player, for example, something that plays media, you weren't going to get that. You were just going to interact with the teacher, the books, and whatever else was there. Um, the expectation seemed to be always that we should be mastering verb tenses as we get them, and we know that that doesn't happen until later on. There were few opportunities for authentic communication. Now you can get online and have two classes can have an exchange. You can get on italki and have a guest speaker. Now it's completely different. There's so much less focus on being right, which is a great thing. There are so many opportunities to acquire language. YouTube. There's a lot of now today's textbooks have lots of great materials, lots of authentic materials, internet radio, audiobooks, streaming news, etc. Great sites that give immediate feedback, tons of tutorials. I think a person could learn or teach all the grammar in a language, in many languages, because by curating it on YouTube, it's fantastic. Checklist for a proficiency-oriented language class. So basically, it's all about what you can do and what they can't do, right? That's what we're doing now, right? Using the target language as a vehicle for instruction and communication. It's the main focus of class. The majority of class time is spent doing things to build those communicative skills, include speaking, listening, reading, and writing. Everyone feels comfortable taking risks. You know about and use proficiency-oriented assessment, and errors are accepted and celebrated. I have this quick guide here to a summary of learning reading to learn languages, right? So first you learn to read and then you read to learn, right? You did that in your own language. When you learned how to read, a lot of it was, a lot of us kind of just sort of learned without really any awareness of how we did it. But reading instruction would recommend, formal reading instruction would recommend that, sort of 90% to 94 is your sweet spot, maybe even 89. Below that, you don't want that because that would be too difficult to learn how to read. And then above that would be too easy. You wouldn't be doing any problem solving and your skills wouldn't grow. So in a foreign language, you're going to hit that, it's going to be terrible because you're not going to be in that good sweet spot in that range. So your literacy skills are transferable, so you want active reading. So this is what, for the students in our class, we have to make sure that it's active reading. And sometimes it's as simple as answering the questions that come with the book, but I really like to make them sort of into games, make them interactive. So maybe breaking students up into pairs where they can read to each other, taking turns so they don't feel awkward in front of the class and they're still getting that pronunciation practice. And then maybe they'll write down some facts from the reading or change some of the sentences to make them not facts. And then we all share and decide which ones are true or false. Maybe each group makes 7 questions and then it becomes interactive. You have to get the answer from the text. So, my group asks another group the questions and then it becomes an interactive speaking and listening activity. Maybe you take a storyboard and you pick the 6 scenes. Maybe you pick out 8 things and you write a summary. Maybe you find 10 words that you didn't know what they meant, take them out of the reading, get their meaning, and then go back to the text and listen. But making it really interactive is the key to be able to extract all that vocabulary and grammar all in context. The next one is how long does it take? So this graphic was made from the research for the Foreign Service Institute, with which you're probably familiar. If you're not, they train diplomats and consular workers in the United States to learn languages before their assignments. And they're focused on it 100%. And they've divided up languages into different categories depending on difficulty. Naturally, ones that are sort of closer to English are in category 1 and in 2 as well. There's 1 and 2, I believe. Some of these European languages, and then you get into languages with different alphabets, very different cultures, to very, very, very different. And they talk about how many class hours these people, based on their research, took to achieve their exit proficiency levels. Now, I really like to know this because I like to divide it up with what time is available, right? So it really helps in setting goals. If I had 50 class hours, well, you know what? It would be hard to reach those targets. I'd have to be very realistic about what time I have and what time we have to dedicate to the task to reach different proficiency levels. So while I think it's not necessarily applicable to all of us because we're not full-time people working towards going and living abroad, I think they're really good guidelines on how long we can expect to be working on specific goals. And here is my path to fluency. And it looks pretty tiny, but basically all you need to know is at the top there's words and at the bottom there's extended speech. And of course there's everything in between. These were notes from training I did when I got certified to be a language proficiency rater. And much of what we do in formal language teaching is really sort of those top bubbles, right? We're teaching people from the A novice level to get into the intermediate level and then sort of to the top of that level. And a lot of times people, when they get to that advanced level, they're either very motivated, they're taking advanced classes, they're studying abroad, things of that nature. So I think it's really helpful to know that journey. You can't just skip over all those things without doing the work. We got to go through each of those phases. And once we've gone through those first 3 bubbles, we can get into creating. And then once you get into creating, you can get into creating paragraphs, etc. I think, when we talk about fluency, I just think it's important to see it as a continuum and not as an either or point. Also in teaching, culture and language. So ACTFL describes it as, or defines it rather, as people, practices, and, products, practices, perspectives, people, all of that. I like to think about people make, do, and how they see the world, and they're inextricably linked. So any input that teaches culture, right? Things that they can read and listen to that teach culture, as much as possible, should be used. And so for beginners, I think, commercials, realia, videos with lots and lots and lots of support, lots of reading, right? To give them access to culture. And I think this is probably one of the hardest part of a lot of language teachers' jobs, finding authentic materials that can be used in schools for languages, right? We just don't have a lot of time or a lot of access to, maybe primary school type materials that would be appropriate for language learners. And I also want to talk about Krashen's theory of second language acquisition, his first hypothesis, language learning acquisition. And I like to think of these, and this really guides my practice, as the perfect marriage. So, language learning, all of those deliberate activities that we do, grammar study, vocabulary study, intentional time spent in trying to understand and create with language, in addition to natural acquisition, we know that it works, undoubtedly, right? Listening, reading, soaking up language naturally. The two of those together are the perfect marriage, because that's where that fast progress comes in, an awareness of what it takes to learn a language, as well as lots of opportunities to acquire a language. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave me a comment if you have any questions and you want to see future videos that will hopefully be helpful to you in your language teaching. Until next time.